great to have you, Chad.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So I got Chad Schoonover with me today, and I've been looking forward to this interview for quite a while. Got to know Chad actually many, many years ago. His dad, I knew your dad well, and then ultimately met you and Doug Latham.
Yep.
And just kind of, you all have a passion for organic beef, and we're going to jump into what that looks like. And where we started talking was, I think both of us have a passion of one, how you raise your animals to ultimately be healthier. And that ultimately, what I see is it turns into, when we consume products that are grown in a great way, healthier way, we're healthier.
For sure.
And that's what I think has been the missing element in the health of the United States or across the world.
For sure.
Is we've kind of lost that quality production.
That's right.
And therefore it's translating into tons of medical problems. And we can jump into that too. And so what I want to do is just kind of, you introduce yourself, where you grew up, family,
Yeah.
and then how in the world you got into what you're doing.
Sure.
And we're going to jump into what that looks like here in just a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, grew up in
Dalhart, Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And born and raised and right there. And the organic thing was something that came along. We were farming organic in 2010. Doug Latham and myself partnership, and I was on the cattle side of our deal. The organic turned into be looked like the way everything needed to go, you know. And we just kept looking at these cattle, going, man, we've got to do something with this, with these cattle. How can we get this deal organic? So essentially, it was the road kind of started in 2015, and we really just started researching the markets and what actually is organic beef and what's out there. And man, it has been nothing but an education since then.
Yeah.
And so we converted our entire operation over in 2016. Our native pastures, you know, so, and the farm was already organic, so it made a ton of sense. And we've just been holding heifers back and creating an organic cow herd. And this year, so last November, we're right here at a year since we launched our beef brand, and that's how long it's taken us to get here. So
it's a huge
it's
process.
a huge process, and it is but it's real, you know, and that's probably what drove us to continue, and is the smoke and mirrors behind all the marketing, in whether it's, you know, all beef, grass fed to organic, what it actually is, into to our organic product. So it's like I said, it's been quite the road, and but we are super excited, and we're getting traction now, and we're shipping out beef nationwide from right here in the Panhandle, and so it's
Which is awesome.
It's super awesome.
Especially to visit, you know, a year and a half ago, to just, trying to get this launched, to kind of starting to see you're getting over that hump.
Yes, sir.
Like you said, so one thing, I want to kind of go back to organic and just the health benefits. About 3 years ago, I guess you go through the grocery store. This was my experience. I go through the grocery store, and you got organic vegetables, organic fruit, and you look at it, and all I saw was, it's $1 more, $2 more. Is there any health benefits? And so this is where I went on my own journey and really compared organic versus non-organic. Now we'll come to beef in just a minute, but what we're starting to see is there is a huge difference. And so, you know, in the vegetable world, the fruit world, conventional farming, that's what we're going to call it. Conventional farming, we use a lot of herbicides, a lot of fungicides, a lot of pesticides, a lot of different non-organic fertilizers. And essentially, I guess I would sum it up this way, is a lot of that, first of all, it's very detrimental to our soil. It kills a lot of the good microbes in the soil. And then ultimately, we can trace, that stuff ends up in our body. I use Roundup as an example.
Yes, sir.
That's almost a universal thing that we put on all our crops.
Yes, sir.
That are non-organic. And the detrimental health issues that we're starting to see from that is, you know, we see that, number one, it affects our gut health. It basically is like almost like an antibiotic. It kills a lot of our good gut microbiome, microbes. And then there's a lot of other things that mimics some of the hormones in our body. And so there's a lot of some cancers that are starting to be linked to that. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is one. And so organic, I feel like, is essential for our health. So when I go to the grocery store, you know, I'm paying that extra.
That's right.
Now, here's where I think you are unique and y'all's operation. There's not a lot of organic, grain-finished beef.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, I don't know of any.
No, there isn't.
That's a unique thing.
Very.
So what y'all did was take what you're already doing in the Panhandle with growing corn,
Mm-hmm.
your cattle, and now you're finishing them with organic corn.
That's right.
And delivering a premium product that's certified organic.
That's right.
Now, organic, a lot of people can just try to throw a label on their product saying organic, but if you're certified organic, how hard is that to get?
It's very hard.
Very hard.
Yeah. So, you know, your land has to, it can't have been sprayed for 3 years prior. And that's really one of the small things, but really we have to track these cattle from the birth all the way to finish, and every movement record and every vaccine we give them, anything we do to that animal, we have to show traceability all the way through, which is really, it's turned into be a blessing in our operation. I mean, the more we do it, the more we like it, because we're just capturing all this data, and now we have something to measure against, and so it's huge on that side. But the certifications, the audits, the surprise audits, that's something that we've been we've got. And the reason is because we have so many acres. When you take a large Texas ranch and you convert it as organic, in an organic world, they think of a little old, you know, garden and maybe a few backyard cows. And so when you take a large Texas ranch and you convert it as organic, they look at these acres, because we're the largest in the state of Texas, all of a sudden. And you know, and it's so we've gotten to go through a lot of that, but we've also helped with some of the development of what an audit may look like in the cattle industry versus, because everything's so dairy driven, which gets us back to organic beef, and the majority of organic beef in this country is cull dairy cows who have been fed silage and some grains and things and throughout their life, but they're out on pasture for part of the day, and they come back in, but they're essentially supplemented the whole time. And then when they're wore out, they're old, they go to a packing house and they're marketed as organic as a premium. So that's where our big change was. It's either organic dairy cows or it's imported from another country. Mm-hmm. That's our markets that were, so really it was wide open to come in here and say, all right, here's what we're going to do. And we kind of transitioned through looking at the grass-fed. We did some of that kind of stuff. The problem with grass-fed is our growing season's short. Mm-hmm. It's blowing snow right now. We got to feed these cattle something. We add grain for energy. And the truth is we don't, it's, you know, to say grain finished versus conventional grain finished is so different. Because we can.
So explain that, because I want to get into the grass finish, because I used to be a big advocate of grass finish, but the taste on that's different.
It is. And the main thing, and we can get into all that. The biggest thing with our deal is we feed grain. So just say like now, you know, we go into winter, we have to supplemental feed cattle. So we supplement feed our cows. So we go into winter with a pretty good body condition on a cow, and they're going to lose weight over the winter. As long as it's not in excess, we're okay. But we supplement alfalfa, oat hay, wheat hay, things like this. and we're feeding from pretty much 2 weeks ago all the way until we get green grass. And so we're supplementing cattle all the time, but our beeves, the cattle that we take to meat, we finish those on a ration. So they're grazed their whole life up until about 4 months, and we finish them on a ration. And that ration is mainly alfalfa, oat hay, and corn grain. And the corn is only about 50%, a little less than 50%. And the reason why is cattle are a ruminant animal. You have to have a long stem grass, say, to buffer that rumen and move those grains through and things. So a conventional feedlot feeds 70-80% concentrated grain diets, right? Which you need to do that. You need synthetic additives, right, to be able to combat acidosis and issues like that.
What affects their health, and so doing it that way in a feedlot, really affects the health of the animal.
It affects it can it really can, and it's back to the grocery store thing. You know, we're without just throwing the industry, like, because you know you're a farm guy, I'm a farm guy. I'm not throwing the industry under the bus, because at the end of the day, if you can't be the guy that walks in the grocery store and buys the cheapest beef and sit here and have this conversation.
Yeah, we have to feed a lot of people.
That's it, and it's about efficiency and how can we make these cattle big as we can. That is the conventional market. So our market's completely different. Our consumer's completely different. They want to know exactly every input that's put through these animals, and with confidence. But they also know it's going to be more expensive, because here we are saying, okay, we're not going to push these cattle very hard. We're not going to add any of these, no hormones, ever. No antibiotics, not fed or injected. And you want to sacrifice efficiency. That's how you do it in the cattle industry.
And on the production side, like, one thing I don't think consumers appreciate, when you're trying to grow all those crops organic, you're not using the latest and greatest herbicide and everything. You got weeds.
Yes, sir.
You got your yields are less, but it's because you're trying to do it the old-fashioned way.
Oh man.
Which is healthier.
It is.
But it's not necessarily the most profitable. So therefore, your costs are higher.
But we've gotten lazy too. You know, it's funny how some of the things our grandpas used, some of the old equipment that was parked in the fence line, is some of the things we use now in organic. And you know, it just makes you more efficient as an operator to not be able to fall back on a pesticide, herbicide, especially on the weeds, you know, and things like that. I mean, we combat bugs, and it's part of it, and sometimes they kind of get in there and take their toll. But at the end of the day, we're learning, and the cattle side is huge, especially on how we handle them. And we have an advantage because our cattle are born on our ranch, and they spend their whole life there,
which is super cool.
And we don't doctor anything hardly.
Yeah.
And if they get sick, we get them, right? Yeah. We doctor them. We don't let them. People, you know, I've talked to people that think that organic, people you just let them die, and we don't do that. They're no longer in the program, right? So they're no longer organic if we give them a shot, and that's okay. That's part of the business. But at the end of the day, the cattle, we just don't have to treat many. And I mean, out of 1,000 head of calves we raised, we doctored 2 last year, and I'm not kidding. It's from the fence line weaning. So when we wean them, they run on one side of the fence, their mom on the other. There's no semis involved, no trucking, things like that. So anytime you add stressors to cattle, they get sick. You know, it's part of it. So our cattle can somewhat be naive to all the disease in a commingled commercial feedlot because they never leave, and so we don't get into some of that stuff. So,
and it's I want to come back and talk about health benefits here in just a minute, but even like the processing, I mean, it's a whole separate deal because the beef, like you said, is traced. They don't want any contaminants, so they really, you know, the FDA. Well, I guess is it the FDA?
USDA.
USDA watches this.
And NOP, National Organic. Yeah.
They watch the process, and like you said, they are very. You got to keep meticulous records to make sure that that finished product, if it has the USDA stamp of approval, organic, you know that product's never seen any contaminants.
That's right.
And I can't emphasize how hard that is.
It is hard.
A lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of investment. I want to walk through the health benefits because with my patients, I think that's something that as we're going through this, people are always trying to get a hold of us.
Apologize.
You good?
No, yeah.
Okay. So just health benefits. And I want to just walk patients through, the true difference. So of an organic grain finished beef versus just anything that you get in the grocery store. So on the producer side, cattle along the way, let's kind of talk about what they potentially eat. They're gonna get some conventionally raised corn, which that corn is going to have most likely been exposed at some point to some Roundup in that at some point. Some fungicides, pesticides, and that cow is going to consume that forage that has that contaminant. And we know for sure that you can trace in our body. Matter of fact, there was a study the other day that up to 90 to 95% of us have Roundup in our urine. It's crazy. They did a study with women, particularly who were breastfeeding, and they saw it in I think it was 80% of the breast milk was contaminated with Roundup. So it's a pretty universal, I'd call toxin in our environment. Your beef doesn't have that in it.
No.
So then we take the cattle who's consuming forage. The cattle itself, a lot of times in the feedlots, get antibiotics. Okay? That antibiotic, not only does it help with acidosis, but it also helps make that cow fatter. Okay? There's been some studies that's just a little low dose antibiotic in cattle as they're being fed out. Actually, they produce more meat quicker.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you look at obesity epidemic in America, we're given antibiotics all the time.
Yeah.
You go to the doctor, you got a little sniffly nose. So I've always questioned, is that causing some of our obesity epidemic? Because we're all exposed to so many antibiotics. We're exposed to antibiotics in our meat.
Yeah.
If you buy conventional meat at the grocery store, you're going to have probably some kind of contaminant. Would you agree with that?
If you're buying meat at the grocery store, conventional meat, it has been through a lot of things.
Yeah.
Or exposed to a lot of different things, from like you're talking about, herbicide, pesticides, even in grass-fed, right? Only organic. It would be so grass-fed beef. A lot of pastures that can really do a good job of grass-fed, those grasses take herbicide, and so and also wormers and synthetic wormers the cattle have to get because for parasites and things like that. You can't do that stuff in organic. So all the way to the feedlot, So we use Rumensin would be an antibiotic, a fed antibiotic that we'd talk about, right? So as a rumen buffer, so we can push cattle a little harder, and combat bloat, things like that. You can that's kind of a big pusher, and then all the way to a beta agonist at the end. So that's a fed hormone that's fed the last 30 days, and it can put on 30-40 pounds of meat. Yeah. It changes the cells and makes them get bigger. But it's a kind of a result of an industry that's makes very little margin on, and it's all about selling pounds.
They have to push the animals.
That's it. Push them as hard as we can.
Yeah.
And because we got to sell meat.
I've always wanted to study. Essentially, this industry has learned how to make cattle obese. In essence, it's all about putting on weight in the shortest amount of time.
Sure.
And so if you look at that model that they've created, I think we could learn a lot as a human in what's causing obesity in us. Is it some of these practices that's causing that? Is it the low dose antibiotics? Is it the hormone exposure? Because we're always, not only are we exposed to potentially hormones in our non-organic beef, but just in general. There's so much overlap that I think a lot of those things that we're exposed to in our food is causing all these medical issues. And so that's why I've been a big advocate for trying to transition as much as your diet that you can to organically grown food.
You bet.
So I applaud what y'all are doing. So tell me a little bit about, let's talk about Ribbonwire Ranch, just your product. I order steaks. I order flank steak, fillets. Your fillets are awesome.
Yes, sir.
Your ribeyes are awesome. Your ground beef is awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Kind of tell us, a little bit more about how you set up the delivery system.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about how patients can order that.
You bet.
And kind of walk me through all that.
Yeah. So we have a facility in Delhart where all the meat comes back to, and we ship once a week. We're probably going to open that up a little more. We're doing a lot more business in Texas than we initially thought we would. We thought, our market's not in our backyard. It's going to be coastal type communities, and we do ship a lot of meat to California and the East Coast, and which is neat. But we ship a ton of meat in Texas, and so we bring all the meat back, and then we facilitate all the orders out of there. We do have a full line of meat from your roast to all your primal cuts and your steaks, and we just started the meat sticks. So we have the beef stick, and that's a lot of fun, and that's a big hit. And then summer sausage also, a couple flavors of that, and then with jerky, and we're getting into that stuff too. So it's a growing thing. It's definitely new. It's an education for us, but we partnered with some guys with Texas Tech and their meat science lab, Dr. Marcus Miller. They have been huge on helping us with genetics in the cattle. Those are things that we can naturally do, right? Just have cattle that will feed better this way, right? That'll naturally finish at a lower weight, that we're not having cattle that need to be 1,400, 1,500 pounds before they're finished. So we are feeding a little smaller Angus animal, and it's been a lot of fun. But our customers we have a ton of repeat customers. So if we can just get meat in front of you, you're ordering again. So it's been fun, right?
And I testify to that.
Yeah.
I love it because y'all are very punctual. So I'll make an order on Sunday night, and by Monday afternoon, it's headed out the door. I can see the little shipment. It's being shipped. One thing our patients, particularly after surgery, beef jerky, they love beef sticks, because what I like about beef is it's one of the most nutrient-dense foods that we can eat. It has all your essential amino acids, and it's biggest bang for your buck. But now that we have it in an organic form, to me that's a whole nother level.
You bet.
I was going to say something. Just when you compare, particularly our patients, when we do surgery, their stomach is smaller, and therefore everything that they put in their mouth has to count. It has to count.
Yep.
It has to be nutrient dense.
For sure.
And so, certain things like meat just gives them all, a good source of protein, a good source of vitamins. It has some good fats, essential fatty acids in there. So, great product.
Thank you.
Now, I want to just comment on, we've talked about grass finished versus grain finished, and I've been on this journey myself. Mm-hmm. I've tried a lot of grass finished beef out there.
You bet.
And I'd say this, probably 15% of it I love.
You bet.
It's tricky.
Yeah, it is.
Finishing cattle
consistently
and making them not have those off flavors.
Yes, sir.
And so what I love, this is where I really fallen in love with your product, is you got the best of both worlds. Okay, you got an animal that's being raised properly, but yet has that grain finish at the end, just to take
Yep.
what those off flavors out, give it that premium taste, what we're all used to. Because as Americans, I don't think you're going to switch everyone to grass-finished beef.
No, you're not. Food. If food is only fuel, I'm not that guy. I eat what I like, you know.
Yeah.
But I get we understand the grass-fed deal, and the main thing is consistency, and it's because cattle are finished on different times of the year. So cattle coming off of wheat are going to taste really terrible.
Yeah.
You know, cattle in the winter fed hay may not taste as bad because it's not going to be they're going to be eating dormant plants and things. So, you know, like hay and things like that. So it's a huge difference. Our idea is take the same ration all year, and we just finish those cattle those last 4 months with that, and it's been a huge deal for us, and it's how we can be so unique and also stand behind a product that's like it's great, and it's great all the time.
It's consistent taste. Yeah. So I appreciate you joining me.
No, I thank you for having me. For sure.
This was awesome.
Yeah.
What we're going to have a link for all our patients if they want to get your product. They're going to be able to basically access this on our newsletter. But what is your website? How can someone order this?
Ribbonwire.com, ribbonwireranch.com. Just search Ribbonwire, and you can find us, and maybe we can get you a link but either way, we're real easy to find. Yeah. So.
And what I like, you got a great website. It's easy to navigate. You kind of add your cart, and then
and look us up and learn about us. We got a big about section and talks about the ranch and what we do, and pictures from the ranch and the farm, and that's one thing we hang our hat on, is just being transparent. It is what it is, and you know for a fact what you're getting. So, and you can access our store and make orders right there, and we'll get them right to you. So.
That's awesome. And I want everyone to know that, and I don't know if we emphasize this, but the ranch and the farm is just west of Dalhart, Texas.
It is west of Dalhart. Our west fence line is the New Mexico Texas state line. Ribbonwire is we got our name from the actual barbed wire that still hangs on some of that fence line, and so it was that Ribbonwire was created back in 1881, and it was put up over 6,000 miles of it on the XIT. So our ranch is a portion of what used to be the old XIT, and so that's where we got our name, and we love the history around that place, and you know, the majority of it is exactly like it was 140 years ago. So it's pretty fun to get to go back to our roots and really just do something that's kind of, we're not changing the industry, but we sure took a different road. So.
And I appreciate you doing it, because I think you are trailblazers.
Yeah, it's fun.
And I think the most important thing for our health going forward is how we produce our food.
You bet.
And finding farmers and ranchers like you and Doug to basically lead a path that hasn't been necessarily established. And so applaud you, and thanks for making a great product, and thanks for joining me today.
No, appreciate it very much.
All right, great to have you, Chad.
Yes, sir. Thank you.